Welcome back to another episode of the Rain Race Podcast. I have a flight in 11 hours and I'm going to Petite Le Mans, but my unwavering dedication to this podcast is making me be here anyways. I am your host, GT Rain. Alongside me over here is I crashed in the Esses.
Yeah, got to keep her out of the S's this weekend. Hopefully, you'll be able to stay out of trouble in the S's this weekend at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, that is the rundown for this episode. We're going to be doing a Petite Le Mans preview at the end, and then I will scurry off and get some very limited sleep, and then hop on a flight tomorrow morning. And not really planning on doing any content at the track, unfortunately, but I might try to throw some YouTube shorts in there or something on my Twitter/X account as well. So enjoy that. It's going to be a fun weekend. It's going to be a big championship fight in the GTP class. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be my third year on the trot, going to Motul Petit Le Mans, and it's going to be a lot of fun, I think. Anyway, before we get to that, we have a lot of news to talk about because, Stu, you and I have been off for 3 weeks now?
Oh, man. Yeah.
We had that 3-week run at the start, and then we took some time off. We were supposed to have an episode last week, and you were busy, and then we had a somewhat notable news story drop the next day, so we're like, let's just push it back a week. It'll be perfectly fine. Yep. And that's what I'm going to kick things off with today, because I already posted a YouTube video, I posted a YouTube short, and now I'm doing a podcast talking about the...
You must be pretty excited about this.
A bit. I might have mentioned it once or twice, how I was really looking forward to the potential of this program. The Aston Martin Valkyrie Hypercar program is official again. You know how great it is to say that, though? You know, how many years of on and off rumors of people saying, oh, it might not be completely in the grave yet. People are just giving us the teaser of that Cosworth V12 at Le Mans, and now it's finally a reality again. I gave my thoughts on it. It's going to be a dual program run by the Heart of Racing in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship and the FIA World Endurance Championship starting in 2025. At least one car in each series. It's going to have that naturally aspirated Cosworth V12, no hybrid system, which is a bit interesting for that car. Only real major OEM factory program to be in that situation. What's not to love? Honestly. Your thoughts on this? I know you haven't been as vocal about this program as I have, but I'm sure you're right up at the top with me in terms of excitement for this one.
Yeah, I definitely am. I have a soft spot for Aston Martin, sort of wherever they run. So I definitely contained my excitement a little bit more. But man, oh man, like you see what I understand that the track day car and what we're going to get for the hypercar that we're going to see racing and the WEC and IMSA aren't going to be exactly the same, but it's in the same general sort of scope. And how can you not be excited for this? The V12 that's coming, you're seeing this is the first confirmed hypercar that we're going to see come over to the IMSA grid. Hopefully it's not the only one that we're going to see coming in 2025. But I mean, you the slow buildup that we've had up to this sort of over the summer with Heart of Racing, you know, taking over the Northwest AMR entry and the WEC, and clearly showing the good relationship that they have with Aston Martin. It's kind of satisfying to see it all play out to this point, where we now have confirmation that, you know, the Valkyrie is going to be on the WEC and IMSA grid in 2025, at least one entry in each. Hopefully, as you said, I think you said you're hoping for 2 in the WEC. Hopefully,
I'm hoping
we
for
could
50 as far as I'm concerned. But...
I mean, hopefully we see as many as we can possibly get, but just super exciting. Great news. We've had so many shots in the arm, I feel like, with manufacturers joining the GTP or hypercar ranks in the past few seasons. And this has been one that has been, you know, right there since the very beginning that these regulations were announced. And to finally hear that they're going to be on the grid is incredible news.
Yeah, like you said, I've been vocal since day one. We've probably talked about this on the podcast. You and I have done this is our 4th episode together. I think we've mentioned it in at least 3 of the 4 episodes since we've revived this whole thing. Couldn't be more excited. Wish it was 2025 already, but we got a year to sort of let things sit in, let them develop the car, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. We got a couple other announcements, I guess tidbits of news since the original announcement last Wednesday, that I just want to touch on a little bit this episode. So SportsCar 365 had reported recently that all the customer cars, has reported that customer cars are a possibility after the factory Heart of Racing program is underway. That's the priority for 2025. But of course, one of the big things with the new LMDH/Hypercar formula is the emphasis on customer programs. We haven't really seen any factory Hypercar customer, or not factory Hypercar customer programs, like it goes against each other. Any customer Hypercar programs yet. That would be the first of its kind if it were to come to fruition, provided no other manufacturer like Ferrari, Toyota, etc. start their own customer program. I'd really be looking forward to it. I think that would be a great option. I'm glad that as a manufacturer, Aston Martin is at least open to it. And like I said, the more GTP hypercars on the grid, the better to me, as far as I'm concerned. Now, the article also pointed out that there will be 6 chassis produced for the 2025 season. We know, like we'd mentioned, that there will be one car racing it in each series, at least one car in each series. My prediction, based on that information of having 6 chassis for 2025, would be one car in IMSA, maybe 2 for the World Endurance Championship. I think that sort of settles in nicely, sort of the inverse of what Cadillac is doing right now with their IMSA WEC programs. I feel like as a team and as a manufacturer, Aston Martin would probably be more interested in a world championship, and that's why I could see them putting that second car in the World Endurance Championship. But that's just a theory. I've been wrong probably more times than I've been right in the past. But based on what they've been saying so far, that's sort of the idea that I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I always wonder if these manufactured chassis numbers include test chassis or not.
Oh, yeah, of course they would. And that's why I think having 1 in IMSA and 2 in the WEC would kind of make sense, because I don't really know how many test cars / backup cars these manufacturers all have. I'm sure Porsche has a handful already. But having 1 backup / test car for IMSA and 2 backup / test cars for the World Endurance Championship would sort of make sense to me. That's again my impression. Often wrong.
If we do see multiple entries, it's probably much more realistic that we'd see that in the WEC right off the bat. I think it makes sense for them.
Yep. We got Taurus in the chat saying the Aston Martin announced IMSA program out of the gate is a shot in the arm for IMSA. I don't know if it's... I see where you're going at here. A shot in the arm makes it sound like it's a negative. I see where you're going, though. It's a big positive for IMSA. You're right. I mean, it's the first Le Mans hypercar to be racing in IMSA, confirmed at least. It's, we're talking about all the positives with this car. It's got that Cosworth V12. It's bound to be a real fan favorite. So for them to already be committing to that full season in IMSA, fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I would expect absolutely nothing less than that.
And hopefully that leads to, as we touched on a moment ago, other hypercar manufacturers taking the plunge and coming over as well.
Absolutely right. I mean, Ferrari, we've had a whole episode about this. Ferrari, Toyota, been a bit hesitant to dip their toes in the water so far. Of course, we talked about the reasons behind all of that. I'm hoping that this is just a little bit of a push, just saying, look, guys, it's if we can do it, so can you. I would love to see more cars in the GTP class in IMSA in 2025 and beyond.
Yep.
Let's see. The comments from the GTP team seem positive. More competition and good racing for the fans should always be top priority over all the BOP politics that the casual fan wouldn't be concerned about. I saw that article as well, that a lot of the other manufacturers are welcoming Aston Martin with open arms, and I'm very glad about that one as well. There's been a lot of controversy in another series that shall not be named, where a new team is trying to join and they're not being met with that same enthusiasm. I wouldn't really expect anything less from sports car racing manufacturers. They're not really in the same position as Formula One teams, and I'm just really, I'm really glad that Aston Martin is getting that support from those other manufacturers already. Aston Martin Hypercar is Gabe Newell's latest and greatest excuse to not give us Half-Life 3. Yeah, Gabe Newell, obviously the Steam co-founder. I think he's CEO still, maybe not.
Definitely has a
and
high up
CEO
role.
of Valve. Yeah, higher up at Valve, nonetheless. Large video game developer and also distributor, I suppose, via Steam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's there. You go. If you want a gaming connection, there you have it. It's great to see Aston Martin back. I'm pretty sure that Alpine will be the next manufacturer to join IMSA with MSR. Why don't we talk about it? All right, let's talk about MSR because
there's one more thing I just want to touch on quickly with the Aston Martin news. They also announced the Vantage Evo.
All right,
that's coming out as well. So that's really good for the world of GT3 racing. The first the Vantage that's being raced now is actually one of the older GT3 cars on the grid. So, but yes, Meyer Shank Racing.
I was gonna say, what a way to slip a GT3 Evo announcement under the radar is just to be like, we have a V12 hypercar. We also have a GT3 Evo, but I've given my opinion on GT3 Evo kits. They're not far and few at this point in time. So the Meyer Shank Racing, though, this is another story that came out last week. We didn't get to touch on until now. Will not be racing at IMSA in the 2024 season. That will be the first time since, I believe, 2003, because they started in 2004 in Grand Am, and I don't believe they've missed a season since. Of course, they've gone through the classes. They've raced
what haven't they raced in?
Ligier P2 car. They raced the Daytona prototypes. They raced an Acura NSX GT3 for a couple of seasons. They then switched to of course, the ARX, DPI, and GTP cars. But you're right. We will not be seeing them on the grid in IMSA next year. Real big loss for them, honestly. Not for them, but for us as fans, I think. They've been an extremely strong team. Obviously, however you want to look at it, they won at Daytona this year. They won the championship last year. They won Daytona last year. Really strong team. And it's unfortunate that we're going to see them absent from the series next year. Their main priority right now, at least that they stated, is to focus on their IndyCar program for next year. It unfortunately feels like they were sort of forced out of the series. It seems like they didn't really have anywhere to go. I mentioned, I think last episode, saying maybe we'll see them in an LMP2 car next year as a bit of a filler. And for first and foremost, they have mentioned that this is not the end of their sports car racing programs. They will be back. I think a lot of people are anticipating them being back in 2025 with a new program. I'll say personally, I've heard rumblings that they will be back in 2025 with a new manufacturer, whether that's new to the series or just new to Meyer Shank. I'll leave that up to your interpretation. That's what I've heard, and I'd certainly be excited if those things come true.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. We go from such a big win in hearing that the Aston Martin is going to be coming over to IMSA, and then we have a bit of some sad news with Meyer Shank Racing leaving for the first time in almost 20 years. It's disappointing that they're not going to be on the grid. You mentioned kind of a bit forced out. I think part of that, if we were looking at lots of these LMDH programs or even another hypercar program that was offering customer cars, we could be having a different story. This could be a different story right now, where Meyer Shank Racing isn't necessarily leaving, but are just taking on a customer car. If maybe they were linked with Porsche potentially, or at least reached out and had some discussions. Who knows how far those actually went? But with Porsche developing their new, I don't even know what you would call it. It's not an Evo kit. They're just making some reliability upgrades. That kind of threw a wrench into those plans. And then, maybe by the time they learned that, we're going to talk about here in a minute when we talk about Faf, that the lead time for getting a car in sports car racing is not, you don't just turn around and it's right there for you. It takes some serious time to get. and it just may have gotten to the point where it was too late for them to be able to source an LMP2 car for an entry next season. But you kind of alluded to it. Hopefully they're going to be back in 2025. They're a prime. That is a great program to take a crack at bringing in a manufacturer potentially like Alpine. There's so many links there that would just make it make sense. And I really hope that that's a partnership that comes to fruition. But, it's disappointing to see them leave the sport temporarily, and fingers crossed that they'll be back.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say exactly what you said. The turnaround time for starting a sports car racing program nowadays, especially a prototype program, is a lot higher than it used to be. I really wonder what the timeline's like here, because obviously they won Daytona this year. The whole scandal came out in early March, I believe it was. Around the middle of the yeah, I think it was right. I know it was before Sebring. I can't remember if it was late February, early March. Around the middle of the season, that's when it was announced that Wayne Taylor Racing with Andretti Autosport would be sporting those two cars next year, those real factory-backed cars, so to speak. I don't know if what I'm trying to say is I don't know why Meyer Shank was really given the boot on the program. I don't know if it was because of that sour relationship due to the whole Daytona situation. I don't know if it's because Acura really just wants to prioritize the two Wayne Taylor entries next year. It does sound like they were really caught off guard, though, because like you said, they should have had more time to try to find another partner. You had mentioned Porsche. I think the other big thing with Porsche is Porsche already has two customer cars on the grid right now.
Yep.
And not to, that's not even including the customers in the WEC. So
yep.
Are they really in a position right now to add on that third customer in just the second season? I think it's a little bit too much too early. I can also tell you that throughout the summer, it seemed like even Mike Shank himself was unsure whether this program would continue or not. It just didn't seem like they ever had a clear direction. And like you said, I think they just ran out of time on this one.
Yeah, I mean, you heard rumblings over the summer that, if Meyer Shank, if they could somehow claw their way back into the championship and win it, or have a serious chance at winning it, then, that would be pretty hard for Acura to let that go. Whether that actually had any play into how late this went on is we don't really know. But one of the things that I heard discuss, I don't remember if it was in an article somewhere or on this week in sports cars potentially, but they were talking about the Andretti Autosport and Wayne Taylor Racing news came pretty late in the year last year. It was too late to give Wayne Taylor the second. They didn't have time to build up the program enough to be able to support that second car. If that funding and that partnership had come 6 months earlier last year, we could. I mean, is it possible that we could be talking about Meyer Shank Racing not even having been involved in the Acura ARX-06 and the development and running it this year? I wonder if that's a possibility. You could probably go. There's a million things you could probably talk about as factors in this, but I guess at the end of the day, to sum it all up, is it sucks. It sucks for IMSA, everybody.
Was that announcement that Wayne Taylor would be running two cars? Did that come last year?
No. Sorry. The announcement that Wayne Taylor would be running two cars came partway through this season.
Okay, that's what I
thought.
But
the partnership announcement between Andretti and Wayne Taylor came, I think it was towards the end of last calendar year, maybe around this time last year.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that sounds about right. It was in the off season, I believe. After Petite Le Mans, certainly before Daytona.
Yeah, the development of that car was well underway with Meyer Shank Racing as well.
Right.
So.
Yeah, let's see if we got any comments to talk about on this one. MSR might want to focus more on their IndyCar program while waiting for the Rolex 24 tire dramas to blow over. I think focusing on the IndyCar program, as blunt as it is to say it, is a bit of a cop-out. I think that that's what they're going to say in their, that's what they said in their press release, essentially. Given everything that we heard over the summer and the timeline of everything, like I said, I feel like they had wanted to be on the grid for next year. They just couldn't find a program in time. And of course, they still have that IndyCar program to focus on. That's great. It's not a complete total loss for them because now they can go focus. They have that third Indy 500 entry next year with Elio that they can focus on. But I don't think this was MSR's decision to focus on IndyCar. I feel like this was more of a, let's take this as circumstance and roll with it. Got Formula Jonah tuning in as well. Thanks for tuning in. You're currently beating me in the metrics for sports car racing YouTubers, so it's nice to have a bit of a YouTube rival here tuning into the podcast. Stu, you're one of them as well, though, for what it's worth. Speaking of Acura / Honda, Honda Performance Development, this was like 3 weeks ago now. It shows you how long we've been off. Is sort of rebranding, but also realigning their HPD banner for the U.S. Honda Performance Development to become Honda Racing Corporation U.S. beginning next year. What that means is that HRC U.S. will play a role in Honda's global motorsports activities as well as F1. We're seeing just a bit more alignment there between the whole Honda America side of things and the Honda global side of things. I think a good way to think about this is, I think we talked about this as well before, but Toyota is very similar. Well, they'll have TRD, which is focused on the NASCAR. I think they are also in charge of the Formula Drift and NHRA programs over here. And then you'll have Toyota Gazoo Racing, which focuses on, of course, the WEC program. They have the WRC program, Super GT over in Japan they might be involved with. But point is, you have a whole separate entity. And usually across Honda and Toyota, the two of them didn't really cross over all that much. Which is why I think Honda / Acura has been hesitant to join the hypercar ranks in the WEC for a while. It's just that the car's branded as an Acura. It has Acura styling cues. Acura is very much a North American brand. It's only sold in, I believe, the United States and Canada. And so I think that having that sort of merger there, or I guess realignment of how they want to keep those two entities in check, is that we might now see a bit more discussion with cars like the ARX 06 racing in the World Endurance Championship or the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Sue, your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, again, it's insane that we're talking about all these manufacturers wanting to globetrot with their car. We talked about Aston Martin bringing it in and jumping in feet first to IMSA and the WEC. And it's been a little, like you said, it's been a little bit more of a hesitant approach from Acura or Honda, which whatever it's going to be badged as. But this is a car that this has been one of the big missing pieces in the WEC that people have been asking for, fans have been asking for. We saw it come out and it won the first race under these new regulations at the Rolex 24, whichever way you slice it, whether it was the 60 or whether you think the 10 should have won. They finished first and second in that race. They were very, very strong. And it immediately brought into question, why is this car not in the WEC? Why is this car not going to be at Le Mans? And this is kind of, I think this is probably laying the groundwork for that, or at least there's a path forward to the next steps that you could feasibly see taken, I think, to bring this car to the WEC and to Le Mans. And anytime you have that, I don't know what the Le Mans grid might be projected at for 2025 with the addition of Aston and if Acura were to get in. But man, you are approaching that's touching a big 30. Grid.
You're touching 30 cars in the hypercar class. Remember when I said that sports car racing just has like such a nice problem right now? That there's too many cars that are interested in racing, and we're gonna have to start turning people away. Like it's crazy that sports car racing is at that point where there's so much interest in the top class right now that grids simply cannot accommodate it. and we're going to see how IMSA handles that some point in the next week or so with their announcement of next season's entry list. It's crazy that we're in this position. I can't believe it. I wouldn't have believed you 5 years ago for the slightest if you told me that this was the case. But let's take it back to square one here. Like you said, this lays the groundwork for the ARX06 racing at Le Mans. It's not like it's all of a sudden a massive priority. Wayne Taylor Racing and Andretti Autosport, I'm sure I think both of them have been vocal about wanting to race at Le Mans. Andretti's competitors Penske and Ganassi from IndyCar already have their own factory programs competing for the overall win. I'm sure that sits in Andretti's mind. And Andretti never really got that opportunity back in the LMP1 days when they were racing well, of course, they actually didn't race the LMP1. They raced the LMP2 ARX over in the ALMS. This is a wait-and-see situation, though. I think if we start hearing things about it towards the middle of next year, then it's something that we'll keep our eyes on and something to maybe start to get excited about. Guaranteed you're not going to see an ARX06 hypercar on the grid next year for the WEC, and I can almost guarantee you wouldn't see one for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I think that you can pretty much rule both of those out for next year. But for the future, who knows? And if it is true, and if we have another one, maybe two cars racing at Le Mans, like I said, you're touching 30 cars maybe. How are you going to handle it? Let's see. It's going to be interesting for sure, though. HPD, we're happy to call the ARX03C an Acura in the U.S. and a Honda abroad. Okay, yes, you're right about that. Where I'll draw the line, though, is that car was a basically purebred LMP2 car. It didn't really have the same styling cues that you see out of the DPI/LMDH formula, where that's been a really big emphasis. And I think that, I don't know how much of a factor that actually plays, but the cars are very much designed to look similar-ish to the road counterparts. I mean, there's definitely styling cues. With Acura, you have what do you want to call it? Like the chevron type thing on the nose. That's very reminiscent of some of Acura's road car styling. Whether that actually weighs into the manufacturer's decision, I don't know. But I think it's been brought up before that the car's style as an Acura is designed to look like an Acura. And these corporations all have design languages that everything has to follow. So I think that adds a little bit of complexity to it that you didn't have previously. But you're right. And same applied with the ARX03, like you said, Taurus. Any closing thoughts on that one from you, though, Stu?
No, I think that's about it. We're just kind of in wait and see mode there.
Yep, as many things go. Faf Motorsports, what was this, like yesterday morning? Had a surprise announcement that they would be switching to McLaren, your homegrown GTD Pro team over there in Canada land, with their plaid livery that will not be any longer next year.
Sad.
They started racing, of course, a Porsche in 2019 in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. They've been one of the fan favorites in the GT ranks since then, largely due to their livery, which many people have fallen in love with. But the beginning of this season hasn't really, I think this season as in general, but especially the beginning of this season, didn't really play the way that they necessarily wanted it to. Of course, we mentioned Daytona in the first episode with balance of performance. Porsche was really on the back foot at Daytona.
Understatement.
Understatement of the episode right there. Porsche right now is very focused on their GTP programs and their GTP customer programs. There might be an advantage to switching to a manufacturer like McLaren that's only focused on racing in the GT ranks right now, at least with customer programs. They don't have a hypercar program yet. Maybe they never will. We'll see.
Yeah.
But if you switch to a manufacturer like that, there might be some advantages. And Faf's definitely a strong team, and I think that partnering with McLaren in a situation like that might play a benefit for them.
Yeah, I was on the fence when I first heard the news. Obviously, you mentioned the tough season that they've had with the Porsche, but these things tend to level out over time. I don't imagine that we're going to be seeing the Porsche at the back of the grid for the the remainder of that car's running life. But this is an interesting one. There's a great little 15 to 20 minute interview that Marshall Pruitt put out on his podcast right after the announcement was made, and it was a conversation with I can't remember Steve Bortolotti's title, but he runs Faf, the racing side of things. Can't remember his exact title though. Anyways, he had a conversation with Steve, and Steve was talking about the excitement that surrounds McLaren right now, and whether this is, just trying to be excited about a new partner and or whatever. But it sounded like there was some genuine excitement there that, McLaren wants to throw some serious effort behind this sports car program. And this is a great step for them. They've had some relationships McLaren has with I think it's Crucial Motorsports in IMSA, and then Inception. Yep. And they've been fine. Inception has had some very strong runs this year, and it seems to be a pretty competitive car. But they've just never really had that extra piece to put them on the same level as, Paul Miller Racing, to get them up to a level that you feel like they would be a serious contender in like the GTD Pro class. Yep. And with a team like Faf that is obviously, they won back-to-back GTD championships, one in GTD and one in GTD Pro. They've been there, they've done that. They are very much still a team that is on the rise, and this could be a partnership that helps McLaren, sort of brings them to that next step. You did mention, could there be anything there with a hypercar program if McLaren does actually complete that project? I think that's a very realistic point. Faf, whether the rumors, conversations were real or not, there was definitely discussions about them potentially getting a Porsche 963 customer car at some point in the future. Again, whether those were real or not, we don't really know. But, if McLaren ever brought, that hypercar program to the world, then you could be looking at Faf that now has an existing relationship with McLaren and could be primed to take that next step too.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're looking for a dual, we're seeing manufacturers who want to do dual IMSA WEC programs, who is a prime team to sort of front that McLaren hypercar hypothetical IMSA program at that point. It
would make a lot of sense.
You got to keep your eye on things like these, and you're right about that. Let's take it back to 2024, though, for now.
Yeah.
And what we know, which is that they will be racing next year with the McLaren and GTD Pro. I heard from a reasonable source that there is a current IndyCar driver that will likely be part of that team for the Rolex 24 next year. I'm leaving that up to everybody's interpretation. Keep your eyes on that, though. No other formal announcement has been made on driver lineups yet. I'm trying to think of McLaren factory drivers that might be able to make the switch to that program. Does Inception have any? I think Ross Gunn, is he a McLaren?
No, he's at Heart of Racing in their pro car.
Yeah. Who am I thinking of then?
Oh, there's
not Ross Gunn, but he has like a similar.
I know who you're talking about. No, Jordan Pepper. Did he leave for Lamborghini?
He's Lamborghini. Who am I thinking?
I don't know.
Somebody tell me who I'm thinking of. It's not Ross Gunn. Yeah. It's somebody, though, who's a McLaren factory driver. I'm trying to think of Inception's drivers right now as well. See if either of those.
Frank Schandorf is their pro, you could say.
Right.
And then Brandon Arieb.
Yep. It's a wait and see moment, I guess. We'll we'll wait on that one. We're not.
We'll have to wait and see what the driver announcements are there. Those will be interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
and one thing that I also found that was interesting, again, I go and check out the interview that Marshall Pruitt put up on his show with Steve, but they mentioned that they're likely not going to have that car in time for the IMSA sanctioned test at the beginning of December. There's a 3-day test, and they are likely not going to be getting the car until just after that test. So, by December, by the time December rolls around, there's certainly nowhere up here to test the car, unless if you're going to take it on some snowy, wet roads.
Dust off Mo Sport. All right.
Yeah.
Just plow the snow and you don't
Maybe
even have to drive far.
Maybe they'll test some snow tires on the McLaren. Who knows? Who knows? But
so class first.
Yeah.
Series first.
But at least the McLaren is a somewhat established program.
Yep.
So it's not like they're running into the Rolex with a completely green car.
Oh, of course. The 720S has been racing since, I want to say 2020?
Well, this is an Evo now, too. I think this is the first year of the Evo.
Yeah.
I think.
I can't keep track, man. I got to be honest. It's the Evos I can't keep track of, especially when there's multiple of them in the case of Audi and Porsche and Lamborghini and everybody. I think Acura has a second Evo car.
Oh, yeah, they got one this year, too. 22.
Mercedes. We'll move on from that, though. But not moving on too far, because sticking on track with the topic of McLaren racing in GT ranks, it was also unveiled that McLaren will be racing in the WEC next season with a 2-car planned effort from United Autosports to race in the LMGT3 class. Of course, United Autosport right now running in a dual-car program in the LMP2 class in the FIA World Endurance Championship. They will be moving the LMP2 front over to IMSA next year, so that's nice. We get an addition on the IMSA side, and in return, we get 2 new GT3 cars from a brand new manufacturer in the World Endurance Championship. And I think it's the first time McLaren will have raced at Le Mans since 1998, to my knowledge, with the McLaren F1 GTR that won back in 1995. Another manufacturer on the grid, though, for the WEC. It looked like it was a little bit up in the air for a while whether or not that program would actually happen. But finally, we got a confirmed announcement for it. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be great to have another manufacturer represented in the GT3 class.
Now, is this absolutely confirmed, or is it still contingent on the WEC proving them as a manufacturer? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So confirmed. The program, in terms of United Autosport running it, is confirmed. Whether or not the WEC allows it is like the part that's in the air. Running under the assumption that it gets allowed, which I really hope it would. There's a bit of a clause next year that may or may not exist. I don't want to report on it as if I'm 100% sure. But it sounds like there may be priority given to manufacturers that have a hypercar in terms of running in the GT3 class. Because again, we're running into a scenario where you can't run 50 cars in the entire WEC season. The max next year is projected to be 36 cars. So you have only 2 classes next year, but if you have the hypercar class and you have the GT3 class, if both classes have 18 cars, you're already filled. And there's going to be interest for a round, if not more than that. So you're going to be at a point where you're turning teams away. I think that Proton's a bit in the same position with the Ford Mustang GT3 program, where Ford doesn't have a hypercar, so it's not really guaranteed that they get that slot. My phone's ringing. I'm going to let you talk about this while that goes on.
Yeah, it's definitely not guaranteed that they're going to get that spot, but you would have to think that of all the manufacturers that are in this position, Ford is one of them. McLaren is another one. Oh, there's another one that's skipping my mind that is going to be in the similar boat as well. But you have to think that Ford. Well,
there's no real interest in Mercedes. Audi, I think, had a little bit of interest for. We'll see. I'm
Yeah,
trying
you
to
gotta
I'm
think
trying to
that
think of
one's probably pretty far down.
what programs have actually been discussed beyond just the initial phase.
Well, actually, Aston Martin is one that was also sort of questionable because they don't. Well, now that they are confirming that they'll be on the grid in 2025, you have to think that probably gives them a pretty good boost to their chances for next year. But McLaren is definitely one of those big question marks that they could be one of those cusp entries on whether they're permitted to enter next year. It's probably between them and Ford. I mean, this.
I'm hoping it's not. I mean, we're not in a position where it's either or, because
Yeah.
both of them would be great additions. And I always say the more manufacturers, the merrier. So what we do know is that it's pretty much limited to 2 cars per manufacturer next year, simply because of the entire we don't have space argument. I know Project One Racing was interested in racing a McLaren as well. They won't be able to do that next year if United gets their bid approved. So we're in a situation. This is what sports car racing is like in 2024.
Yeah.
Good problem to have. Still a problem. However you want to look at it, it's the way it is.
Now, let me put my tinfoil hat on here for just a second.
Gotta love when you do that.
We just talked about Faf, and they've shown interest in the past in getting a top level prototype. United Autosport is a great program as well. They've run prototypes, of course. They have a very strong LMP2 program. Also, solid argument that they could be ready to take a step up.
Yeah, I mean,
it wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be a bad way to set the table for McLaren to announce that maybe the LM8 or the hypercar program is coming. But again, nothing is confirmed. That is purely me speculating and hoping.
Let's wait until I'm boots down on the ground in Atlanta in a couple of days, and then I'll start hounding Faf at the autograph session or whatever for information.
You'll need my tinfoil. You'll need my tinfoil hat too to keep you warm on those cold nights.
I definitely will. I don't know. Does it make sense? Sure, but a lot of things make sense but don't actually end up happening, especially with McLaren. They've been on and off for years now, so I will believe it when I see it.
Look, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I hope you're right, but that's as much as I can give to that for now.
And if it does happen, we'll come back and we'll clip this. And we will.
And we'll look like geniuses.
Exactly. And if not, nobody will ever remember that we said this.
Nobody will care. Tell you what, though, on things that are more guaranteed, Cadillac sort of outlined their program intentions for both IMSA and the WEC next year. Only racing 1 car in the FIA World Endurance Championship, continuation with Chip Ganassi Racing. We discussed the rumors related to this in not last week's episode, but the last episode we did, and some of the issues that arise with only running a single car program for the full season. Give you the SparkNotes version of it. You have half the data. You can't have the second car act as sort of a mule for mixed weather conditions. You're getting half the practice time on track. Take any factor that you really have for a program like that, you're just cutting it in half. And when I said that originally, I said, I don't know if Cadillac is quite as serious about trying to win Le Mans, winning the World Endurance Championship as a manufacturer like Porsche or Penske would be. At the end of the day, who was on the podium at Le Mans this year and who wasn't? Cadillac was on the podium, for those who don't know. What it actually turned out to be was budget concerns that are the reason why they're sticking with the current system that they have. I think it makes sense logistics-wise, cost-wise. It's very expensive to run a car in the World Championship. But again, this sort of opens questions of what does Cadillac's overall budget look like compared to a manufacturer like Porsche, like BMW that we're seeing now, like Aston Martin maybe. We'll see where they are in 2025, how many cars they have across both series. I think they acknowledge that it's a disadvantage for them, but that's sort of the situation they're in right now. They're going to make the best of what they can. And by all means, there's still a strong program over there. They're still a fully factory program. They have a great driver lineup still. They were on the podium at Le Mans, like I said. I just think that it puts them at a slight disadvantage for trying to win a world championship. Also for IMSA, though, they will be racing 2 cars again. You still have the Wheel and Engineering number 31 run by Action Express, and you have the 01 Chip Ganassi Racing car. All 3 entries are said to be applying to race at next year's Le Mans 24 Hours. We'll see if all 3 of them actually get approved. This ties back to what we've been saying about 5 times this episode with the whole spike of interest thing. Is there actually going to be room on the grid for all 3 of those cars to race again? We'll see. Your thoughts on this, though, because it does sort of tie into the IMSA side as well.
Yeah, a little bit disappointing to hear that if they weren't going to at least go for the second entry in the WEC, that they weren't going to add on to their commitment in IMSA and potentially add a third entry. It wasn't that long ago that Cadillac was discussing the possibility of having customer cars available. I think potentially as early as 2024. I think this was before we even had the first race in the GTP class, but they were definitely ones that were evaluating it and talking about the possibility of providing customer cars, just not in the first year. And I think it's a little bit disappointing that if they aren't offering customer cars, they aren't expanding to a second full season entry in the WEC, and we aren't seeing any expansion stateside in IMSA. It's interesting. You kind of wonder, like, what is preventing this? Is this just corporate pressure that is being applied and preventing this program from expanding? Is there something strategic that's going on behind the scenes here? What's going on behind the scenes? I'm sure there's a lot, but yeah, definitely disappointing that we're not going to see more in the WEC next year. Hopefully we are going to indeed see 3 on the grid at Le Mans. That would be great. But
I think for Daytona.
Yeah, likewise for Daytona. But I guess who knows?
Here's what I'll say from the corporate side of things. Corporations play a huge aspect in top level racing, especially. We do know that Cadillac is very involved in the Andretti Formula One bid, sort of going in as their manufacturer technical partner, even though it wouldn't be a GM engine from the start, at least. So if that Andretti bid goes through and gets F1 approval, it's in FIA hell right now in the approval process of trying to actually get into F1. So we'll see if that actually happens. If it does, and let's assume that Cadillac right now is working under the assumption that it does get approved. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of resources to run an F1 program. Maybe they're just trying to be a little bit lenient right now on how expansive their prototype program actually goes, because any programs that you support right now, you're probably going to have to support 4 or 5 years from now. So, you probably have to be careful if you're in a situation like that. But it does sort of take me back, because Cadillac in the DPI era is very much what Porsche is now. I'm trying to remember all the Cadillac customer programs we had over the years. We had, if you mention all the teams, we had Wayne Taylor racing a Cadillac at one point. We had Action Express. We had Juncos, JDC, Spirit of Daytona.
Oh, yeah.
Am I missing anybody? I think that was all of them.
Probably missed somebody.
Yeah, and of course you had the 48 Action Express car that was supported by Hendrick. So, you had a lot of Cadillac customer programs then in the DPI era. We're sort of seeing a 180 of that right now. Right now, at least. Maybe that'll change for 2025. We'll see. And it would be great if it did. But that's the part that really starts making me ask questions. What's the difference? What's the real change here that's making them not as open or just not as willing to jump feet first into a customer racing program as they were in the DPI era? It's more expensive, we know that, but is there another reason we're not sure of, or is that it?
Yeah, I think you might have hit the hammer on the head, or hit the nail on the head with that one. Hit the hammer on the head. Hit the nail on the head with that one, with the F1 engine program, because obviously that would be a massive tie-up of budget and just other resources as well, that they probably don't want to commit to stretching too thin. And I think it would make sense that would be that's the big domino that's waiting to fall before we hear any news about Cadillac. And I don't think that program, even if the F1 program does happen, doesn't sound like that's in any danger of going away. But I think it would probably be pretty. I don't think you'd see that going through a tremendous period of growth in the next few years if the F1 bid is successful.
Yeah, and I don't want to see, the last thing I want to see is Cadillac leave over an F1 bid if they get approved.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time. It would actually be the third time in recent memory that we had to happen. Of course, Aston Martin did a 180, and thankfully they did. Well, shows that we can truly coexist and have two programs at once. But it definitely is a big investment for them to take on. So I think, like you said, like I said, this is probably going to be one of those things that just sort of lingers for now. If we hear any news from the F1 program, my guess is that's when you would start to see more action come out of it, whether it's a definitive no to customer racing or we start seeing customers pop up.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. Let's see. I think we had a couple of questions related. Going back to the GT3 thing, Ford, Aston Martin, and McLaren, one of these brands will not be allowed to race in LMGT3 next year. So I'm guessing that's based, assuming that this is fact, I'm guessing that that's based on space limitations.
I think that's based on, didn't they come out and say that it was going to be like, they were going to cap the LMGT3 manufacturers at like 9 or 10?
I can't remember the number.
9 or 10.
It sounds familiar. Well, we know that we have TF Sport racing the Corvette. We have Manthey racing the Porsche. To be honest, my GT knowledge for
BMW
is a little
WRT.
Limited. Yeah, WRT is racing with BMW. So yeah, I can't remember the number. Somebody might be able to fill me in on that one. But it would be a shame to have any three of those not participate. If I had to guess, though, I would say that Aston Martin's probably the odd one out there because I feel like it would just make sense for the Heart of Racing to. Well, I feel like it would make sense for the Heart of Racing to focus fully on preparing the Hypercar program.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
Proton / well, not / Ford, but Proton Racing already has a Hypercar program.
Oh, I think Ford is kind of a lock. Because of the Proton relationship. Yeah.
Right. Sure.
But I don't know if I had to bet on one of those three being excluded, I'd probably lean towards the McLaren. Like they haven't been. Aston Martin has a really established presence in the WEC, and McLaren. I don't know when the last. I think you mentioned it was the last time that they. Yeah.
Well, never in the WEC.
Yeah. But. So. Yeah, it certainly would be interesting to see where they go with this, but I also wonder if the news coming out or becoming a bit more clear recently that we might not see manufacturer like Glickenhaus on a full season grid next year,
which I don't think you will.
Yeah. So I wonder if
full season.
I wonder if some small tweaks like that, they find a way to squeeze all of these GT manufacturers on the grid, because I think all of them do they have a pretty good argument in front of them why they should be on the grid.
Yeah. 16 or 18 max for LMGT3.
So that's 8 or 9 manufacturers then.
Right. I would have to do the homework on that one because I didn't come prepared to talk about LMGT3 today, and I don't have enough knowledge about what teams are. I'm a bit of a fraud, man. All right, because I talk big game here. I know sports car racing. You know what I focus about the past couple of years is prototype racing. My focus is where all the interest is, and I'm very excited for the GT3. integration of the WEC next year. It's going to bring a lot more manufacturers than we have in GTE right now. But simply, I haven't paid close enough attention to talk about it and at least know what I'm talking about. So I'll do my homework on that one, and we'll talk about it next week. For now, though, I have, like I said, what do I have? Like 10 hours now until I'm on a plane going to Motul Petit Le Mans for the season finale of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. It's been a long season. It's been an exciting season. It's been we've had a lot of new cars on the grid this season, and it's all coming to a close. By. It has flown by. You're right. At the same time, it is. It's been a quick introduction for the GTP cars, and just a couple stories to go over before we preview the race more properly. I think it was this morning, Shank Racing Motorsports announced that they had to pull their entry due to a family emergency with driver Lance Wilsey. The team currently is sitting 5th in the LMP3 team standings and 3rd in the Endurance Cup. It could drop down a bit in both standings because of that absence. But, of course, the first priority is that Lance's family emergency, however big or small it may be, gets sorted out. Of course, you want the best news out of that front first, then where they would finish in LMP3 for Petite Le Mans. Yeah. That team also a bit notable because they've been out at Daytona the past week or so testing the new Ligier, not the new, but their new Ligier JSP 217 that will be racing in the LMP2 class next season.
They had to blow the dust off that car, probably.
Oh, yeah. No reported issues out of the test, which is great. That Orica, not the Orica, but the LMP2 cars in general are pretty bulletproof, it seems, the past few seasons, or really since their start in 2017. And then especially when they had to detune them a bit for the performance of the top class, even more so. I'm really excited, though, that we're going to have another manufacturer represented.
Yeah, it also helps that they're bulletproof because one manufacturer was able to work out all their issues, having grids of them everywhere in the world.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But on that note, I'm glad that we're not just going to have the Orica Cup next year in IMSA. We do have that slight, only a little bit, but a little bit more manufacturer involvement in the LMP2 class, which is always great to see. With the introduction of Shank Racing Motorsports Ligier next year.
There was a tweet from Ben Keating this morning that I think there was a fan that said they posted something that, I'm going to be cheering for the only non-Orica on the grid next year. And Ben hopped into the replies and was like, what are you doing? And the guy who tweeted this was also named Ben. So there was a pretty amusing back and forth that happened there.
I missed the Ben War.
Sorry?
I missed the Ben War on Twitter.
Missed the Ben War, yeah. Anytime Ben Keating gets involved in something, it's gonna be pretty amusing.
My first interaction with Ben Keating ever was back in 2018. No, sorry, it wasn't 2018. It was 2021 when I went. I was pulling up to the track at Watkins Glen, and Ben Keating was the car alongside me at the gate in a Chrysler Pacifica minivan.
Jeez.
That was the company car that he had at the time. So
wow.
Quite the ride.
Oh, speaking of Ben Keating rides, this is completely on topic. He's going to be racing in the MX-5 Cup this weekend.
He will be.
Yeah.
The Bumblebee series.
Yeah.
My ears are very much somewhat not looking forward to being put through. Those cars are loud. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I mean, those are like the loudest cars in IMSA. Well, if you take any IMSA series, those are the loudest. I have to verify this with a sound meter, but they sound the loudest.
The problem is that there's like a pack of 30 of them that are all bumper to bumper. It's so loud because they're all traveling together.
Yeah. Well, of course. And they also don't have any muffler on them at all. It's just an unrestricted 4-cylinder blowing your eardrums out for 40 minutes or whatever it is. But yeah, that should be a great race. I'm really looking forward to that one, because the only other time I saw an MX-5 race was at Road America in 2021. No, not Road America, Road Atlanta, 2021, when I went to Petite for the first time. I caught the last half of race 2. And I was going to see the end of race 2 for the Rolex 24 this year, but Daytona security is a little bit tough, and I didn't get into the track in time. So
Jeez.
that'll be my second time watching an MX5 Cup race.
They are incredible. Watching them in real life is, or crawling out of a tent at like 8 a.m. in the morning and hearing MX5 practice on track is, you can't wake
I
up.
thought you were talking about Daytona security for a second.
No.
There's a different word to describe them. It's not incredible. Let's see. The Cadillac's V8 is probably the loudest on a sound, but the Mazdas are the loudest because they're always migrating together. Yeah, it's probably, if you want the scientific answer, that's probably right. An MX5 race, though, is probably the loudest IMSA experience you're going to get these days. Now that the C7R and the 911 RSR are gone.
Super Trofeo cars are pretty loud, too.
They are. I haven't seen those since Watkins Glen 2021 either. So
they have a good sound to them.
Yep. Are they racing at Petite?
No, I think their season is done. Well, they might still have their big final over in Europe. I don't know where. It might be in Portimao again, but they're done stateside for the year.
Okay. Couple other things to note on though for Petite Le Mans. Like I touched on earlier, the full 2024 entry list will be unveiled this week with all like 60-ish cars. However many actually end up racing in the full season, that's what I'm waiting to see. Daytona, though, is Daytona capped at 60 or 65? Yep. I can't remember. 60?
John Doonan, he mentioned Marshall Pruitt did an interview with him on the IMSA YouTube channel at Indy.
I just want to point out really quick. Really good job that IMSA actually did that. They're still putting out some of that content from Indy. And I think that that's a little bit of what IMSA's been lacking is just some at-the-track content. And I think that's where the WEC had a bit of an edge on their content.
Yep.
But keep it up, IMSA. I think that was a great idea, and I'd love to see some more of that in the future. Continue.
Agreed. But in that interview with Marshall Pruitt and John Doonan, Mr. Doonan confirmed that 60 entries is the max that they're looking at for the Rolex. Of course, they pushed that to 61 this year. Who really knows why? But so I wouldn't expect that again. But he did also mention that I think they've received 65 either full season or Michelin Endurance Cup only entries at that point. And we're looking at, I think Road Atlanta, we're maxed out this week at 54. They said that they had to turn some cars away. So that could be interesting to see how the full season entry list shapes up this week.
Yep. Didn't they race like 65 cars of the Rolex 24 in 2014?
Yeah, but I think the amount of space that's needed for the GTPs because of the electrification is larger now. Yep.
Makes sense. In terms of weather for the race, since this is going to be my point of concern standing out there in that Georgia clay without an umbrella or anything.
You'll have my tinfoil hat though.
I will. It'll keep me nice and dry. We're seeing some potential rain Wednesday through Friday. I'm not a meteorologist, but keep your eye on it. The IMSA WeatherTech qualifying session is on Friday evening. Don't remember the exact time. It's around sunset time though. And we might be getting some rain during that session. It looks like if we get any rain, that's probably the most likely time we will. So might get a bit of a rain qualifying session, which would that be the first time this season we get a qualifying session in the rain?
Well, Watkins Glen was more of a torrential downpour than it was a passing shower, but they canceled GTP.
Yeah, GTP didn't even run there. So that would be the first, assuming it does rain, would be the first time we get to see the GTP cars at full tilt in the rain, or in qualifying at least. The
race doesn't look like it's going to be as cold for you either.
No, I'm just taking complete W's this year with the endurance races. Daytona, everybody's like, Daytona's freezing at night. I'm very much like you. I'm from the Northeast. We do cold different than the Floridians. So like if
That's
they're
true.
like, oh, it's like 40 degrees, I'm like, whatever, that's hoodie weather, you know. But apparently the humidity makes it awful. And I was at Daytona this year and the low was like 54 or something. I had a short sleeve shirt on at night, no sweatshirt. So yeah, I'll take it. Looks like we're gonna get some nice dry weather for the race, hopefully. Maybe just a little bit of rain creeping into the start period on Saturday morning just before noon. But again, don't take my weather report to heart because it's Tuesday and I don't know jack about meteorology.
This,
In terms
this
of
is
the race
backed up
itself,
by a meteorologist, by the way.
yeah,
What you just gave us?
somebody out there did their homework, and I'm just relaying that to you. In terms of the actual race, though, because that's more exciting than me talking about weather, you did a full rundown video. We did a full
Yep.
rundown last podcast after Indianapolis about the whole points scenario rolling into the race. So I don't want to do a complete recap again on this one, but just looking to see if you can give a quick rundown on the incredible GTP class championship battle that we have and we'll see on Saturday.
Oh, it is going to be incredible. There's going to be 54. Well, there until Sean Creech, unfortunately, having to withdraw their entry. There were 54 cars that were set to take part in this one. Probably looking like 53 now. So an absolute jam-packed field. You're going to see 10 entries in GTP, which is been great to watch racing in that class. But really the focus of the weekend is going to be on that GTP championship hunt. It's incredibly tight. There are 7 teams that still have a mathematical chance at winning this. But there are really 4 that have a realistic chance, I would say. That don't need a miracle in order to win it. 4th place, you have the number 25 BMW M Team RLL entry. They're 38 points behind the leader there. In 3rd place, number 6 Porsche Penske Motorsports 963, just 5 points off the lead. The points lead could change based on qualifying. It's insane.
And likely will.
And likely will. Yeah. You're very, very true. The number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing Acura, they're in 2nd. Oh, yeah, they're just 3 points off of the points lead. And then leading the way is the number 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac. Kind of funny that we see the number 31 and the 10. They're duking it out here yet again. It feels like when it boils down to the end of the season, they're always kind of going at it. You'll remember, was it, I think, 2021? Where it was Ricky Taylor and I don't remember who was in the 31, but it was like the last lap they were going into turn 10 and Ricky Taylor, Nazar, okay, dived down the inside and through the gravel. Man, some incredible racing there. I fully expect that this is going to come down to the final hour. I think you can just say that now. It is going to be an incredible championship hunt to watch right down to the bitter end.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Petite Le Mans never disappoints. I don't remember the last time we've had a disappointing Petite Le Mans. But here's how it stands going into the championship. Wayne Taylor Racing is 2nd place again. Would this be the 3rd year in a row, I think, that Wayne Taylor would finish 2nd in the championship?
Yeah.
So, you got to imagine that that's on their mind. Obviously, Wayne Taylor's sick and tired of finishing 2nd in the championship, and they got eked out by Meyer Shank at the Rolex this year for that win. So, really, I think they got a lot of pride rolling into this one. They're looking for that win, and we'll see if the 3rd year is the charm on that. I know John Dune is listening right now, so I'll talk about it, but I mentioned on my Twitter account that I kind of just wish that IMSA took the points that they have and divided them by 10, because if you did, you'd have 1 point separating the top 3.
Yeah.
And just being able to, mention that on TV. And I think this championship fight's sort of slipped under the radar a little bit. I mean, of course they'll mention it in the TV broadcast, but this is an incredible championship battle that we have. for the finale. I didn't think it would get any better than the last 2 years, and yet here we are, and this is what it's looking like. I kind of wish NBC would do a better job at showing the championship finale, and I'm going to save that rant for the off season because I actually do have some stuff to talk about there.
Oh boy.
But yeah, I understand the whole college football Saturday type thing, but I just really wish that for the season finale with the championship as close as it is, I would love to see some more TV coverage for the race rather than just streaming on Peacock. But I digress. It's going to be a fantastic one, and there's a very good chance it comes down to what we saw last year, where it's whoever finishes in front becomes the champion. Sort of depends what we see in qualifying.
Yeah, and we've seen it so many times in years past that a car can have a great opening 6-7 hours of this race, but when the sun goes down, if you do not have that car prepared to tackle the cooler nighttime conditions, then that's where champions are made, are in those cooler conditions towards the end of the race when the money's on the line. And don't be discouraged if your favorite team or driver isn't looking so hot after the opening 6 hours of the race.
And if you are discouraged, I'll point you back to a little year called 2021 when my personal favorite Mazda DPI, my beloved car, in its last race was like 3 laps down because they had an issue with that car. I can't remember exactly, but they had some engine related issue to that car. I could actually hear it before it was brought up on the broadcast just going by. It didn't sound right, and I think they went 3 laps down.
Yep.
And of course IMSA has their wave around yellow rule, and IMSA has no shortage of full course yellows towards the end of a race. But most times at least. So they found themselves back in the hunt, and sure enough, they were able to steal that win in the final hour. And that's why I wasn't focused on the championship battle that race. I actually sort of completely forgot about it. I was more concerned on seeing Mazda win their last race, to be honest with you. You're right. And historically, if we look at it, the final restart is usually when the track's completely dark. So you really do want to have a car that's set up for nighttime driving. I know you had mentioned in your video that the Cadillacs historically are pretty strong at night. I think you had mentioned that that's your pick going into going for the winner of the race, potentially winner of the championship at that point. Are you still sticking with that one? That's your soul read pick.
That's my brain pick, but my heart wants the number 25 BMW because I just want to see the split screen of the BMW pulling off to the side at the Rolex, the 25, I think it was the 25 that pulled off the side of the Rolex like an hour into the race. Mm-hmm. And then I want to see the side by side of them popping champagne bottles over that car.
Yep. My gut pick, I'll tell you who it is. Let's see. This is probably not going to work that well. Can you?
Oh,
you see, that's a Penske. I've been waiting all episode to do that joke. That's a Penske Porsche right there. I just think Porsche's been too strong the past couple races, and I think they had somewhat of an incident that took them out of Sebring this year that I'm sure they don't want to talk about. But they were a definite contender for the win of that. And Sebring was a bit of a crash fest / disaster class for some of the GTP teams anyways. So maybe it wasn't entirely representative, but you look at the past couple of races, Porsche's on top of their game right now. And they seem like they've sorted out the reliability issues that they had at Daytona. They're the only team to get a 1-2 in the GTP class this season. So I'm going to stick with them for now. We'll see if that actually results in a championship for them or not. But that's who I'm going with.
Solid pick.
Soul pick. Absolutely. And actually, I was trying to think of it now. This is where I really show my own intelligence when I start trying to do math. But so let's see. If we get 35 points for the pole sitter, I'm trying to think if it actually matters. I'm trying to think of how much qualifying would actually shake up the points at the end of the race. Because second place gets, 320 points? I'm trying to remember what IMSA's points. Yeah, 320 points for second place in the race. So I'm trying to.
So at the very worst for the 31, at the very worst, they would be in a dead tie for the points lead. That's if they qualified qualified 10th. And if Wayne Taylor got the pole, they would be tied with them in points. I know that.
Okay.
So I think it's a 13-point swing is the biggest swing that you could see.
Okay.
In qualifying.
Right.
Oh, sorry. It wouldn't be a dead heat. They would be minus 10 points, but it would still mean that whoever beats who in the race would win.
Okay. Yeah, that's really what I was looking for right there.
Yeah.
So
it's insane that we're talking about that literally the top 3. It could really come down to just, okay, all right, have at it. If you beat them, you win the championship,
Yeah. And that's sort of what we saw last year. But now we're seeing it with even more cars on the table and even more manufacturers.
4 cars, yeah. All 4 manufacturers, exactly, yeah. Wild.
So, that's it. I think I just tune into that race. Of course, it's going to be. If you can't tune into the whole thing, just watch the last hour. It's going to be ending around just before 10 p.m. Eastern time. You're going to have to convert for your own time zone. I think GMT is a nice balance. I think it's just before 2 a.m. GMT time. So, if you're over in Europe, stay up late. It'll be worth it. It'll be a great champion. Hopefully, the one thing I don't want to see is all of them take each other out in the first half of the race, and then we sort of have a bit of an anticlimactic finale there. But otherwise, apart from that, we're set up for a really good one.
That we are. I'm not going to be able to see all of this race. I will be sitting through a wedding rehearsal dinner at that time that I'm a part of, but
stay tuned to my Twitter. I'll help you out.
I'll have the Alcamel timing up as well.
This is actually not a good thing then, because you know what? The one thing I've said is that it's always really hard to follow a race when you're actually there.
True.
I'm often out at the track. There have been times when I'm at the track working, whether it's taking pictures, recording video, whatever it may be, or sometimes I'll just go to the track and I'll be hanging around with friends. The latter is what we'll be doing this time. But either way, you actually follow a lot more of what's going on when you sit home and watch it on TV and you have timing pulled up and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't actually know how many small details I'm going to miss throughout the race. And I guess you're not going to be able to really help me out with too many of those. But maybe on the plane ride back, I will watch as much as I can, at least of the extended highlights, and try to catch up on that one.
Yeah, we'll have to do some serious homework to catch up on everything that's going on in this one.
Yep. And sort of a preview for next week, we will be on next Tuesday to recap everything that happened in Petite Le Mans and crown a champion and do all those fun things. And we'll have news and everything to keep you busy with the rest of it. I want to go back and circle back to some of the questions we had here just to close off the episode, assuming you don't have anything else to touch on for Petite Le Mans.
Let's go questions.
Cool. Ronnie Wynn, this is back when we were talking about the GT3 Evo kits. What do I think the GT3 Evo kits will look like? This is when we were talking about Aston. Probably not a major difference. What we're seeing with Evo kits is just largely bodywork differences, some improved aerodynamics. It's usually not a complete revolutionary change body-wise. You're probably just going to see maybe some more aerodynamic bits on the front of the car, maybe a redesigned rear wing. That's usually what we see from Evo kit cars. Quickly digressing on the topic of Honda Global, I'll be in Japan at the start of November, and if I can time it, I plan to go to the Super GT finale at Motegi. Do you know much about that series? I do know that I have to watch more Super GT racing because Japan does a phenomenal job at motorsports. The one thing that is unfortunate is that their timing doesn't line up great with what we have here on the eastern coast of the U.S., where their races are always at 1 to 4 in the morning or something. So I've definitely been wanting to get into that series a lot more, and Super Formula a lot more in the past couple of seasons, but just haven't really found myself doing it. But I do know that between GT500 and GT300, they have two fantastic classes of cars there. Some cars you're really not going to see in any other series in the world, and those GT500 cars, unless they beat the record again this year, are actually the quickest closed wheel race cars on the planet now, I believe. Because of course it used to be LMP1 cars, and then they got slowed down, and the hypercars are, I believe, slower than GT500 cars now. So you get to see the quickest closed-wheeled cars in racing, which is pretty interesting. Just going along some of the other questions here, and I don't think there's actually a whole lot else.
Yeah, we covered a lot on the go this time.
Yeah. Love to see an RB17 at Le Mans alongside the Valkyrie. Yeah, that'd be great. I personally don't see that one. I think Red Bull's too committed right now to Formula One. But obviously, as I said, more manufacturers the merrier. I would not be opposed to seeing that one on the grid. I'll tell you what, it's a little bit under an hour and a half, which means this would be the shortest episode we've done since this revival, but that's perfectly fine because it is 9:22 my time. I've got to go pack some clothes, and I've got to be awake in about 6 hours to drive over to Boston, catch a flight to Atlanta, and go watch Petite Le Mans. So, Stu, any closing thoughts from you on tonight's episode?
Man, I gotta root for my boys, Faf. The last race with the plaid. Last race with the plaid. Hopefully they can get a good result, and we'll see some champagne for them.
For the Canadians.
For the Canadians.
Happy late Thanksgiving too.
Oh, thank you.
As I might add. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you all so much for everybody who tuned in. It's great to have you alongside, and we will be back next Tuesday to recap Petite Le Mans, like I said, cover any news stories, talk about any rumors, and answer your questions, everything in between. For today's episode, like I said, thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you next week. Take care.